Azerbaijan throws into disarray another anti-Karabakh project. What comes next? This is Azer News. Reinvigorated by its own convincing victory in 2020 on the Karabakh battlefield, the government of Azerbaijan has been steadfastly pushing forward skillfully devised own projects through political and diplomatic means that were impossible militarily in the region of South Caucasus, crisscrossed with the interests of nations with imperialistic past and the least care to Azerbaijan's the national interests. Plans hatched in the backrooms of the pro-Armenian state special services and think tanks to steal Azerbaijan's victory were, are, and will never cease, and the only viable way of preventing them is for the Azerbaijani government to have steel nerve and determination reinforced by the nation's military and economic power. No plans, irrespective of their size and complexity, will derail the Azerbaijani state's drive towards unity, sovereignty, and ability to defend its own national interests politically and militarily, provided all the basic components are in place. The fiasco of another Karabakh plan. Azerbaijan has watered down another project vis-a-vis Karabakh. We are not in the know-how, and when Ruben Vardanyan, notorious for running several money-laundering projects in post-Soviet Russia, found himself in the crosshairs of the Russian special services. However, what we know is that Vardanyan came to the possession of billions of dollars in the boom of the seizure of former Soviet plants, factories, and natural resources in the late 1990s, backed by the then Russian Special Service. On September 1st, 2022, he found himself in the part of Karabakh where the Russian peacekeepers are in temporary control of until 2025 to play an intermediary role in bringing ethnic Armenians back to Baku's all-out control. However, these newfound saviors' virgin speech immediately laid bare whose project he was and what was behind his secondment to the region, for which Azerbaijan shed the blood of the bravest sons and daughters to win it back in 2020. Some 100 days ago, he was escorted to Karabakh and portrayed as a future savior, but now on 23 February, he was ordered to abandon the unfulfilled plan and leave the region in disgrace. His masters might have at least taken care of the date sacred for Russia, but he was not even spared to this end though symbolic. Vardanyan's defeat is actually the case for Russia. However, to Vardanyan's hypothesis, this game continues in his own world. The defeated macho is still taking his last breath, addressing his scarce supporters last night through his tweet account. Remaining loyal to his behavior model, the tough guy tweeted from Moscow to pretend he is in Azerbaijan's Kankandi, bragging he would continue his mission now unaccomplished forever. Vardanyan physically sees that he's been thrown long ago on the list of the vanquished, but he either struggles to understand it mentally or he tries to deceive himself. One is why he's not going out to his beloved supporters in Kankandi, where he found shelter for 100 days, but instead he inspires them to struggle against Azerbaijan via his tweet and in English. This is a weird place he's been for 100 days, let me tell you. He was fired without his physical presence when the decision was made in the local self-made parliament, where he's accoladed and praised. The question is, if he's in Karabakh, why was he not present in person? Vardanyan in limbo for Russia. Although Russia so far implemented hundreds of plans related to Karabakh, its comprehensive relations with Azerbaijan are better than hundreds of pawns like Vardanyan. Russia once again proved oligarchs who fail its plan are useless tools, and the same fate is now shared by Vardanyan. The reason for this is, first of all, Azerbaijan's stern covert or overt pressure mechanism on Armenia and even on Russia, now cornered in all senses of the word. At the MSC, Ilham Aliyev first openly and harshly stated that the name of Nagorno-Karabakh is no more valid. In addition, Russia began to understand the failure of Vardanyan in the same scenario plans related to him, the impact of peaceful pickets being carried on the Lachin-Kendi road with the participation of Azerbaijani eco-activists for 75 days. It's been spelled two different ways in this article. No blockade but control, the reason that botches the plan. Finally, there are reasons behind Vardanyan's failure, that is current Armenian government's dissatisfaction with the far-reaching plan codenamed Vardanyan, and his ambitions for the highest post in Armenia, which scared the Pashinyan government. According to a plenary session, the Azerbaijani president ruled out any contact with the man smuggled into and out of Karabakh, who's neither moral nor physical right to speak on behalf of 30,000 strong ethnic Armenians in Karabakh. but not with the person who's exported from Russia to have the leading position in Karabakh. Maybe export is not the right word. I would probably prefer the word smuggled into, because nobody knows how he emerged in Karabakh, and he's trying and achieving to go back to Yerevan, and from there to Moscow, and then back to Yerevan, and then to Karabakh. Only this fact demonstrates. This once again gives the reason that Azerbaijan's complete control over the Kendi Road will put an end to the shameful end of the pseudo-heroes with the exposure of the next scenarios. And from Urdu Point, Azerbaijan says ICJ sees environment protests on Karabakh Road as genuine. Azerbaijan's Deputy Foreign Minister Elnur Mammadov argued Thursday that the International Court of Justice's ruling on his country's feud with Armenia over Nagorno-Karabakh proved that it did not see Azeri protesters blocking a vital road between Armenia and the disputed regions as Baku's agents. Azerbaijan's Deputy Foreign Minister Elnur Mammadov argued that Thursday that the International Court of Justice ruling on country's feud with Armenia over Nagorno-Karabakh proved that it didn't see Azeri protesters blocking a vital road between Armenia and the disputed region as Baku's agents. Our side presented the court with evidence that these protests have been organized by environmental activists, including the activists' names, photos, and videos, Mammadov told a briefing in Baku. In its decision published on Wednesday, the court rejected Armenia's application and its suggestion that the Azerbaijani government organized the protests. The deputy foreign minister added, the United Nations main judicial body ruled Wednesday that Azerbaijan must ensure unimpeded movement along the Lachen corridor, which has been blocked since December by people whom Azerbaijan describes as environmental activists protesting illegal mining operations in the area. Armenia argued in the court filing that they were acting on Baku's command and demanded that it cease its orchestration and support of the protest. The ICJ ruled that no action on that was warranted. Azerbaijan marks 31st anniversary of Khojaly massacre. February 26 marks a tragic event when Armenian forces committed massacre known as Khojaly Genocide of ethnic Azerbaijanis. On February 26, Azerbaijan will observe the 31st anniversary of the Khojaly tragedy. Azerbaijan will observe the 31st anniversary of the Khojaly tragedy, the mass killing of Azerbaijani civilians by Armenian forces in the town of Khojaly. To mark the event, the Azerbaijani foreign minister issued a statement calling the 92 Khojaly Genocide one of the gravest crimes committed against the civilian population during the decades-long aggression of Armenia against Azerbaijan. The ministry said the Khojaly tragedy, the indiscriminate killing of the civilian population, is only a part of the policy of ethnic hatred, racial discrimination, and systematic violence implemented by Armenia against Azerbaijan for many years at the state level. The statement also published a list of the international documents violated by Armenia during its aggression against Azerbaijan. The ministry said that it's possible to open an international investigation against Armenia under the international law, adding that to date none of those involved in the massacre were brought to justice in Armenia. The ministry recalled incriminating remarks by Armenia's then defense minister and ex-president Serge Sargsyan, who told British journalist Thomas DeWall that before Khojaly, the Azerbaijanis thought that the Armenians were people who could not raise their hand against the civilian population. We were able to break that stereotype. According to the Justice for Khojaly project at the end of 1987, then Armenian Soviet Republic openly laid claim to the territory of the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast of the Azerbaijani Soviet Republic. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union in October 1991, Khojaly, a district located in the mountainous Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, home to some 7,000 people, was completely surrounded by Armenia's armed forces. On the night of February 25th, through 26 following massive artillery bombardment. Armenia's military, together with former USSR's 366th Motorized Infantry Regiment, occupied Khojaly. According to the Justice for Khojaly, of 7,000 Khojaly residents, 5,379 were deported and 613 people, including 63 children, 106 women, and 70 elderly citizens were murdered by the Armenian occupation forces. Besides, 1,275 residents were taken hostage and tortured. 487 were injured, while the fate of 150 captives, including 68 women and 26 children, remains unknown. The actions of the Armenian armed forces tore families apart. 8 families were completely wiped out. 130 children lost one parent, and 25 children lost both parents. Commemorations of Khojaly tragedy. According to the Azerbaijani authorities, the parliaments of 18 countries, 24 U.S. states, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and the Organization of Turkish States adopted a number of documents condemning the mass killing of civilians in Khojaly and characterizing it as a crime against humanity and an act of genocide. Memorials dedicated to the Khojaly tragedy have been erected in several cities of Azerbaijan, including capital Baku, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Germany, Israel, Mexico, and Turkey. Meanwhile, the Azerbaijani foreign minister expects that measures taken at the national level, also effective from the point of view of international law, will serve to end impunity and bring to justice those responsible for serious crimes committed during Armenia's aggression against Azerbaijan. There has to be a legal assessment on the Khojaly genocide, and those who committed this terrible tragedy should receive its proper punishment. We engrave the victims of the Khojaly tragedy in our national memory and honor their reminiscence. Rest in peace, it said. And from Baku News TV, this is a short on the Khojaly genocide.
Dear friends, dear Baku News guests, dear visitors, today we will talk about the Khojaly Genocide in Azerbaijan Democratic Republic against the Azerbaijani people, Khojaly Genocide. It should be mentioned that Azerbaijan has endured ethnic cleansing and genocide by Armenians and nationalists, chauvinists for 200 years. The people of Azerbaijan were deported from their historical lands and became refugees and internally displaced persons because of Armenian occupation. Azerbaijanis were also forced from their historical lands. During the Soviet period, 150,000 Azerbaijanis were deported from Armenia and placed in the Kur-Araz plain from 1948 to 1953. 50,000 Azerbaijanis were forced from their historical territories in 1988, and Armenia became a mono-ethnic state. The Nagorno-Karabakh events, which begins in 1988, along which continues efforts to implement the Armenian desire of building a state from sea to sea, led to the destruction of towns and villages, murder of thousands of innocent people, as well as exile of hundreds of thousands of Azerbaijanis from their native lands. The Armenian government wanted to annex Nagorno-Karabakh despite international legal norms and demonstrates their readiness and the resource to any kind of crime and barbarism for the sake of its ideology. The Khojaly Genocide, the tragedy of the 20th century, was a result of this aggressive and criminal policy. This tragedy, which took place in the 20th century, was one of the most serious crimes, not only against the people of Azerbaijan, but humanity as a whole. The Khojaly Genocide is comparable to the genocides in Katyn, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and Sangma. What was Armenia's purpose in Khojaly? On one hand, that liquidation of the strategic hindrance in the form of Azerbaijan residents of the mountainous part of Nagorno-Karabakh. One of the other hands that was the raising of Khojaly to the crown. Because Khojaly was an inhabited place which reflect the history and the traditions of Azerbaijan since the ancient times. This district culture is classified as Khojaly Karabakh in the Azerbaijan history. Armenian military forces committed genocides in the town of Khojaly with a population of 7,000 people on February 26, 1992. There were 3,000 people in the town at the time of Armenian military forces attack. As most part of the population had to leave a town during 4 months blockade. 613 people were killed, 1,000 peaceful people of different age became invalid during Khojaly tragedy. 106 women, 63 children, 70 old men were killed. 8 families were completely annihilated. 130 children lost one parent, while 25 both of them lost their parents. 1,275 peace residents were taken hostage. The fate of 150 of them still unknown. All these were committed by Armenian militaries with special mercilessness and inconceivable barbarism. Khojaly refugees write in their address to the UN Organization on Security and Cooperation in Europe. In the world, international conventions, laws passed in the world criticize genocides like Khojaly tragedy and call them inadmissible. The crime should not remain without punishment. Armenian military political aggression must be condemned by world community, international organizations, parliaments of the world states must give political, legal appraisal of Khojaly genocide. Military crime committed by the Armenian Republic in the Azerbaijan territories.
And from news.az, Columbia University hosts conference dedicated to Khojaly Genocide. A conference dedicated to the 31st anniversary of the Khojaly Genocide has been held in Columbia University in New York City, USA. The theme of remembering Khojaly, Armenia, and Azerbaijan through military and peaceful means. The main aim of the visit was to raise awareness about the Khojaly Genocide and convey the real facts about the current situation in Karabakh, to prevent disinformation and to draw attention to the process of peace and normalization in this region. Columbia University staff, diaspora members living in New York City and other states participated in the conference. First event, participants commemorated the memory of the victims of the Khojaly Genocide and the war, as well as those who died as a result of the devastating earthquake in Turkey. A film dedicated to the Khojaly Genocide was shown. Ali Asgharov, professor of the Department of Peace and Conflict Studies at the University of North Carolina, and Michael Gunter, professor of political science at Tennessee Institute of Technology, acted as speakers of the conference. It was noted that perpetrators of the Khojaly Genocide should be punished. The audience was informed about brutal deportation of Azerbaijanis from ancient Azerbaijani lands present in Armenia. The participants of the event were presented brochures about the Khojaly Genocide prepared by Haydar Aliyev Foundation, badges, and discs of the movie Endless Corridor. And from CaspianNews.com, Azerbaijani Mine Action Agency gets 5 more detention dogs. Azerbaijani's Mine Action Agency has recently been provided with additional mine detection dogs from the Marshall Legal or Legacy Institute, the MLI, based in the U.S. These dogs will aid in the continued efforts to clear landmines in territories that were liberated from Armenian occupation in 2020. The transfer is part of an agreement signed in April 2021 for the supply of a total of 50 specially trained life-saving mine detection dogs after completing relevant preparations and accreditation based on the International Mine Action Standards, IMAS. The newly procured mine detection dogs will be deployed in Azerbaijan's liberated areas. MLI supplied a total of 65 life-saving mine detection dogs to Anama. Currently, Anama is using 25 dogs to assist the full-fledged mine action campaign. The Karabakh and Izan-Gazur regions of Azerbaijan had been heavily mined by Armenia's forces since the 1990s. Following the Soviet Union's dissolution in 1991, Armenia launched a full-blown military assault against Azerbaijan. The bloody war lasted until a ceasefire in 1994 and saw Armenia occupying 20% of Azerbaijan's internationally recognized territories. Over 30,000 Azerbaijanis were killed and 1 million others were expelled from those lands in a brutal ethnic cleansing campaign carried out by Armenia. On September 27, 2020, the decades-old conflict between the two countries reignited after Armenia's forces illegally deployed in occupied Azerbaijani lands, shelled military positions and civilian settlements of Azerbaijan. During the counterattack, operations that lasted 44 days, Azerbaijan forces liberated over 300 settlements, including the cities of Jabrayil, Fuzili, Zangilan, Kubadli, and Shusha from the Armenian occupation. The war ended with a tripartite statement signed on November 10, 2020 by Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia, under which Armenia also returned the occupied Agdam, Kalbajar, and Lachin districts to Azerbaijan. Since the end of the hostilities, the Azerbaijani government has been carrying out demining operations in the liberated territories to expedite the return of the internally displaced persons. Anama's mine disposal team specialists from the Ministry of Emergency Situations, the Border Services Command, and the Turkish Armed Forces have been conducting demining operations in the liberated territories. Anama deploys cutting-edge Turkish, British, Slovak, and Croatian production machinery to facilitate the process. A minesweeper of local production known as Revival P1 also joined the mine action. The agencies also signed a contract with the British RP's NRC company to conduct aerial research in the liberated territories using drones and various devices. As of February 2023, a total of 64,000, that is 150,000 acres of the liberated territories of Azerbaijan had been cleared of mines since November 2020. Over 28,000 mines and more than 39,000 unexploded ordnances have been detected during determining activities or demining activities. Despite extensive efforts, the demining operations faced many challenges due to Armenia's refusal to hand over maps displaying the locations of the landmines. Azerbaijan obtained minefield maps from Armenia from the Agdam, Fuzuli, and Zangilan districts, which were previously occupied and which reportedly identified the the coordinates of 189,000 anti-tank and anti-personnel mines. Armenia also provided the Azerbaijani side with mine maps of other liberated territories of Azerbaijan. However, Anama reported that these maps were just 2% effective in mine action. According to Azerbaijan's foreign ministry, Armenia has been reprehensibly targeting civilian homes and settlements with explosive and landmines, killing or injuring 282 Azerbaijanis in mine explosions since the end of the 44-day war in 2020. International experts estimate that it will take nearly 30 years and $25 billion to solve issues related to demining. 31 years passed since Khojaly Genocide. On February 25, 1992, Armenian armed forces attacked the city of Khojaly with the help of armed vehicles and military personnel of the 366th motorized regiment stationed in Khankendi since the USSR period. 2,500 Khojaly residents who remained in the encircled town began to move towards Agdam, but Armenians attacked them from ambush. As a result of the Khojaly Genocide, which a tragedy of centuries, 613 civilians, 62 children, 106 women, and 70 old people were killed atrociously. 8 families were completely annihilated. 25 children lost their parents. 130 children lost one parent. 487 were wounded. 76 of them are children. Some 1,275 innocent residents were taken hostage, while the fate of 150 people, including 68 women and 26 children, still remains unknown. According to official estimates, the destruction and looting of the state and private property due to the occupation of Khojaly city by illegal Armenian armed groups caused $170 million in damage to the property of the state and people of Azerbaijan. A monument to victims of the Khojaly Genocide was erected in 1993 in the Khankendi district of Baku. In 1994, a resolution on 26 February, the day of the Khojaly Genocide, was issued with the initiative of Haydar Aliyev at the Milli Majlis of the Republic of Azerbaijan. The document describes the cause of the tragedy and its perpetrators. Since February 2008, the Justice for Khojaly campaign has been held on the initiative of Leyla Aliyeva, General Coordinator of the Intercultural Dialogue of the Youth Forum of the Organization of the Islamic Conference. The aim of the campaign is to inform the international community about the Khojaly tragedy and to give a moral and political assessment of the tragedy in the international arena and to ensure its commemoration of the international level. The international coordination of the campaign is carried out through the website justiceforkhojaly.org. The anniversary of the Khojaly Genocide is sadly celebrated every year in Azerbaijan and many countries around the world. Every year, on February 26, Azerbaijani embassies and diaspora organizations organize commemorative ceremonies and conferences in the countries where they operate. At these events, photo stands reflecting the atrocities committed by Armenians in Khojaly and documentaries and books reflecting the realities of the genocide are exhibited. At present, the national legislatures of 18 countries as well as 24 U.S. states, as well as the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Organization of Turkey states, have adopted numerous resolutions and decisions condemning the massacre of civilians in Khojaly and assessing it as an act of genocide and a crime against humanity. Terror-based policy of Armenia, Khojaly Genocide. Exactly 31 years have passed since one of the bloodiest crimes against humanity, the Khojaly Genocide, happened. On the night of February 26, 1992, the Armenian Armed Forces, together with the 366th Motorized Rifle Regiment of the Army of the former USSR, brutally killed 613 residents of Khojaly and 63 children, 106 women, 70 elderly people. 8 families were completely destroyed. 25 children lost both parents, 130 children lost one parent, and 1,275 people were taken hostage. The Khojaly Genocide is an integral part of the systemic and pre-planned terror policy of Armenians against Azerbaijanis. The Armenians started this policy of terror long before the Khojaly Genocide, since 1987. First, they began to oppress Azerbaijanis with administrative methods in Khankendi and Yerevan. Later, they have further expanded their claims and launched organizing armed attacks on the settlements of Azerbaijanis there. As a result, Western Azerbaijanis were deported from their native lands. Then the attacks of Armenians on unarmed Azerbaijanis became even more intense. The Armenians committed a massacre in the village of Baganis, Aram, in the Gazakh region bordering Armenia. Then, during the occupation of the Azerbaijani villages of Emirat, Garvin, Tug, Salakatan, Akhulu, Khojaly, Jamili, Nabalar, Mashali, Ghasanabad, Kirkajan, Gaibali, Malibeli, Yukhara, and Ashagi Gushalar. Gardagli in Karabakh, part of the civilian population of these settlements, was brutally killed by Armenians. On February 17, 1992, several massacres were committed by Armenians against Azerbaijanis in the village of Gardagli of the Khojaly region in April 1992, in the village of Agdaban of the Kalbajar region in August, in the village of Balagia of the Goranboy region in April 1993, in the village of Bashlibel of the Kalbajar region. That's the Armenians systematically committed crimes against the Azerbaijani people in the late 80s and the early 90s. The Armenian authorities provided special financial and military support to the armed formations that shed the Azerbaijani blood. Late Armenian officials themselves recognized these crimes against Azerbaijanis. The Armenian writer Khojaly executioner Zori Balayan, in his book named The Revival of Our Soul, published in 1996, justifies the Khojaly Genocide and proudly admits the commitment of this genocide against Azerbaijanis. When Khashatur and I entered one of the houses, our soldiers nailed a 13-year-old Turk to the window. Then I stripped the skin of the 13-year-old Turk on his stomach, head, and chest. I looked at my watch. 7 minutes later, the child died from pain and blood loss. My spirit was filled with joy. Then Khashatur dismembered the corpse of the murdered child and threw it to the dogs. In the evening, we did the same with 3 more Turkic children. I fulfilled my duty as a person who loves Armenians. I knew that every Armenian would be proud of our actions. It's clear that the Armenians wanted to intimidate the Azerbaijani people of these crimes with such confessions, but Azerbaijani thwarted this plan of the Armenians. They failed to frighten the people, and the crimes committed by the Armenians were not forgotten. Retribution for Khojaly took place on the battlefield during the 44-day war, which ended the victory of the Azerbaijani army under the leadership of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, President Ilham Aliyev, Although the Armenians systematically killed Azerbaijani civilians during the First Karabakh War and continued their policy of terror during the 44-day war, Azerbaijan did not respond in the same way. Azerbaijani army avenged Khojaly on the battlefield, not hurting the civilian population. Nevertheless, the Armenian authorities continued their policy of terror, bombarding civilians in Ganja, Barda, Mingachevir, and our other cities during the 44-day war. The terror policy of Armenia against the Azerbaijani people continues to this day, just in a different form. Currently, Armenia is pursuing a policy of mind terror against Azerbaijan, despite the fact that more than 2 years have passed since the crushing defeat of the Armenians on the battlefield. They still have not provided the Azerbaijani side with accurate maps of minefields. As a result, civilians in Khojaly, Terter, Fazuli, Agdam, and other regions regularly become victims of mine terror. According to the latest statistics, after the Second Karabakh War ended, 260 people became the victims of the mines. 44 of them died, and more than 200 people received injuries. That's the terrorist policy of Armenia towards Azerbaijan continues to these days, that is. The Armenians who penetrated the houses of the unarmed Azerbaijani population in Khankendi and western Azerbaijan in the late 1980s and committed terror there began to pursue an occupation policy in the early 1990s. Later, they continued the policy of terror, firing at the civilian population living on the Armenian-Azerbaijani border and in the front-line zone. And now they continue their terrorist policy in the form of mine terror, which is the main threat to the peace in the region. And make sure you watch this space. Remember that your engagement through a like, a share, and a subscribe will propel us at warp speed towards the continuation of our mission to truthfully go where no news will have been going before.